And I'm going to ask our speaker for the presentation of the Johnson County School Bond Referendum, and to introduce our person is our Chamber of Commerce, Miss.
Whatever. Okay, good evening. It's my pleasure to introduce Jonna Faulkner, born and bred South Johnston graduate, and she wouldn't let me use her full title, Dr. Jonna Faulkner. I got you then. But we're very pleased to have her. She's on the committee of Friends of the Johnston County Public Education, and she's going to talk to you about the bond referendum.
Hello, Mr. Mayor and council members. As I call her Miss Mule Days, Ms. Bird said, I am Jonna Faulkner, and it was Jonna Lee Faulkner. I always say that so people know that I am, as my grandmother would say, from around here, not too far from around here. And I am delighted tonight to share with you some wonderful news. We have a bond referendum coming up, and it will be November 8th when you can vote yes for our bond referendum. Please notice I did not say anything about voting no. There are a lot of slides, and I promise I will not go through each one. I promised Mayor Medlin I would not go through all 34 of these in depth. In case you don't know, Johnston County is the fastest growing county in the state, and we are the 9th fastest in the nation. And you know that because every day you drive someplace you used to drive and it was easy. It's not easy anymore. There's a lot of growth happening. And in our public schools here in Johnston County, we are increasing, on average, about 714 students per year. And if you read in our local news that we had a little dip this year, please know that that's taken on the 10th day. It's called average daily membership, and that's taken on the 10th day. That's when North Carolina, when we have to give them a number. That doesn't mean that that's our number right now. For example, Triple S High School has already added 200 more students. So there's just a lot going on, and there's a lot of growth. And of course, we expect our growth to continue because who would not want to live right here in Johnston County? And while we know we have local and private schools that are popping up, without those, we would be in actually worse shape in our public schools because there would be no place to put our children. This is where I get super passionate. We have 186 mobile units. Do you all know about the mobile units? They're like little trailers. Each one of those is about $30,000. And that's really important to you people who are really impressed with finance, but I am an educator, and I have to tell you that what's more concerning to me is if you've ever had to take a classroom of students from a mobile unit anywhere else in the world. You're taking them out, you're moving them in a place or space that may or may not have cover, and while you may think little people, it's harder to move them, you try moving some high schoolers from a mobile unit. And if you haven't, we invite you to come help try. So we have 186 mobile classrooms in place, and our average facility is 32 years old. Now, as Ms. Bird said, I went to South Johnston. Who can tell me when that school was built?
1969?
69.
Yes. We still had some of those cheerleading uniforms, I think, when I was there in the 80s, but we won't talk about that. But considering that South Johnston, you know, is a lot older than that, think about 32 years being the average of schools. And we need 253, now this is important, I may give you a test, 253 million just of infrastructure improvements. So in other words, leaky roofs, air conditionings, lab equipment that doesn't work. We need at least 253 million. Right now, and you're saying, okay, well, didn't you just do a bond? We did a bond in 2018, and we got classroom additions, we got a new elementary school, we got security vestibules at all of our schools, and you know how important school safety is, so we got those school vestibules. We got a few new buildings and some expansions, and thank goodness we got some of our heating and air units replaced. Unfortunately, not all of them. We did some bleacher replacements, track replacements, metal roofs, you may have seen those, and parking lot repavements. And this is the one at South. It's grown a lot. And I'm going to flip through these because those are just from other areas of the county. You can see the green dots. This is where there are potential future housing developments in Johnston County. So imagine if each of those green dots are filled with families and children. Our 21-22 membership forecast, I'm just going to summarize this and tell you things you already know. Benson Elementary is at capacity. You know that, don't you? There's still some room at the middle school. And South Johnston is already full. And that's amazing to me because, you know, we have Cleveland and we have West, and now South is back to being full. So when we talk about enrollment versus capacity, you can see from our graph here that as we continue to add families and students, we're going to obviously need to add capacity. And again, this is my teacher heart speaking. If this bond does not pass, we are going to need some more of those wonderful mobile units. So let's take a look. We need 5 at Benson Elementary. Now, you all probably passed by that elementary school. Where do you think those 5 mobile units are going to go? Won't that be attractive? And then if we look around, we need South Johnston High School. We would need 9 more mobile units. So you can do the math. 9 mobile units, $30,000 bucks. Then you've got Benson Elementary, 5 mobile units, $30,000 bucks. My husband's the CPA, not I, but I can already see this is already adding up to a lot of money. Plus all the security issues with mobile units. So that brings us to overcrowding. I want just to tell you which things you already know. If anybody came home during COVID and more people were in your house, there was a lot of wear and tear probably on your house. Or if you have a whole bunch of teenagers coming in, you know, there's a lot of wear and tear on your buildings. So when schools are overcrowded, obviously, our cafeterias, there's more wear and tear. There's more wear and tear on our gyms, our weight rooms. It prevents us from adding a lot of additional course offerings because there's no place to put students. So, for example, if we wanted to add a dance class, you know, more arts in the high school, there is no room for a dance class because it'd have to be a dedicated classroom. You couldn't exactly go in there and teach science. We lose a lot of teachers. A teacher doesn't really have an office; they have a desk, and you know we automatically assume that our students are going to also be able to get to our desk. But when your desk doesn't become your desk all day long, you share it with another teacher or perhaps 2 other teachers. That means there's no space to plan, which leads to probably some unhappiness. That's not why everyone leaves, but you know, you do want a little place you can call your own. And I was sharing with my Parks and Recs new friend here that our playgrounds, they're overcrowded and they're being taken over by those mobile villages. So we want those playgrounds back. And we'd also like some new playground equipment. And when I went to school, if the 5th graders went on a field trip, all the 5th graders went. We have so many students in our schools now with overcrowding that part of the 5th graders may go on one day and part on the other. And you know how that is for building community within a school. And some of our students are eating lunch as early as 10 o'clock and some as late as 2 o'clock. Now, I like to eat, but you know, if I ate at 10 o'clock every day, if school didn't get out until 2 or 3, I would be famished. So you can think about how overcrowding impacts that. We basically need 4 new elementary schools, and we need 4 elementary school expansions, and that includes Benson Elementary. We need a new middle school, 2 middle school expansions, a new high school, and right now that is set to go out in the Wilson Mills area. 1 high school expansion, and that doesn't include the existing infrastructure improvements. So basically, we need $720 million to meet growth and infrastructure needs. As you can see there's Wilson. I'll just skim through these. If you want to know more, just let me know. I'm going to move through because I promised I would. But the 22 bond referendum, if they build the new high school at Wilson Mills, that is going to help with capacity needs at all these other schools. And you're looking at that saying, why South Johnston? That's nowhere near Wilson Mills. There is going to have to be some redistricting. So when you move students here, you're going to move students there. It's that shuffle. It's the same thing that happened years ago when they had to move, when we got some newer high schools. If students are there and their families are there, we, the board, not we, the board of Education is committed to using that same policy with grandfathering in. You know, if one student is here and that's where you live, that they would grandfather that student in. They need to do an addition to Cooper Academy. By the way, Cooper needs new mobile units, and there is honestly nowhere for those mobile units to go. You all can see down at the bottom. I'll move that one because that's really important, I think, to this community. In addition to Benson Elementaries, so you can move your 5th graders to a wing over in the elementary school. We need more safety and security updates, and we need ADA accessibility and improvements to all sites. And while we're on that, if you hear through the rumor mill that the new high school is a proposal to go 3 stories, the answer is yes. That's what the architects are doing, because it's cheaper to build up and fill it with all the ADA accommodations than it is right now for them to buy land and make it a 1-story. We really need HVAC upgrades, and I'm going to share this with you for those of you who understand all this heating and air stuff. I've learned so much about it. South Johnston's on the DOS operating system. Literally, when South Johnston has a heating and air problem, they have to call somebody like from central office, and how telephone tag gets there, to get them out to South to do their air. We're talking, they are on an antiquated, we're talking like if, instead of a laptop, don't you remember the big old computers that were monstrosities? So they're on an ancient operating system. Very old. And there it is. Matter of fact, there's South Johnston's. I love to show this because I don't know what it really means, but it's really bad, evidently. Heating and air people make lots of gasping noises when I show that, when I show the South Johnston heating and air units. You all aren't making gasping noises with the air conditioning units. No gasp? Okay. Well, evidently, it is super terrible, and we need desperately to replace those. And these are all the other things that we need to do, which you can read about, you can see. You see this every day, so I know I'm not showing you anything that you don't see when you ride around our schools. These are some of my favorites with the tennis courts. I do worry about our students' safety. We're basically asking for $177 million, and the Johnston County Public Schools is adding $26.95 from other funds that they have available to them. And it is a long-term plan. They're planning on asking for this year. If it passes, then asking again in 2024 and 2026, so it builds. I better not say that while I'm speaking as Friends of Johnston County Public Schools. We hope this bond, if it passes, will set up the recruitment and retention of teachers, and it will eliminate 83 of those awful mobile units. Plus, it means we don't have to bring in all those others I showed you earlier. It's also going to improve campus safety. I think those are some of the most important points. So it's critical it's successful. It sets up the next 2 bond asks. We have critical growth needs, and it paves the way for our future infrastructure improvements. Not only improvements, but I say have-tos. And do you have any questions for me?
Does anybody have any questions?
If you don't have questions, I have a plea. Please vote yes. You have a brochure in front of you that maps out each community will get something out of this bond. So it maps out. We were adamant that each community gets something out of this bond. So it is there. There's also a QR code on the front if you want to scan that and take a look at our website. It also gives you additional information there. And I always say, don't keep this brochure for yourself. I have lots of new friends in the back that I told them, take this brochure and hand it to someone else. Hand it to someone who may not have heard about the bond referendum and convince them to vote yes. So thank you for letting me spend some time with you tonight. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for taking the time to come and talk to us. And Loretta has a few things she wants to get done while she's here.
Thank you, Jonna. I just wanted to share a few items with you. First of all, the Sundown Concert with Liquid Pleasure is Thursday at 6, and it's the last concert of the season. The concerts have been well attended, and they continue to be a much-loved event in our town. We're working on the schedule for next year, and this will be our 16th year. Coffee Connections is tomorrow morning, and our guest speaker is Patrick Woody, the president of the North Carolina Rural Center. So he's going to be talking about the the legislative agendas and discussing the rural, some of the things they're working on. And, you know, the southern end of our county is still considered to be somewhat rural, but I was told that they have reevaluated, and now we are a suburban county. Mule Days was a huge success. The weather was perfect, and we were blessed with no real incidences. Now, in preparation for Mule Days, the Chamber Board authorized me to talk with all the downtown properties to get the sidewalks power washed. Some merchants have reimbursed us, and I'm working on getting funds from the others. But I wanted to show you a picture up here. The bottom half is power washed, and the top half is not power washed. So as you can tell, it made a huge difference downtown. Downtown looks so much better. And I think people thought I was crazy until they saw actually it helped. Riptide Pro Wash, a local company owned by Austin Barfield and Ashley Clifton, who they both married local girls, did the work for us. They did it during the evening at night when there were no cars parked on Main Street, and also the traffic was minimal. If you have any extra funds lying around, we could sure help with some reimbursement. Also, me, cleaned the alley behind our building, and I want to thank the town for hauling off all the trash. And I personally washed windows and swept leaves from in front of empty buildings on Main Street. We wanted the town to look well kept and loved to all of our visitors. During Mule Days, we fed the town staff lunch catered by Meta Village on Thursday before Mule Days, and we also distributed 50 free carnival passes to underprivileged children, and 48 of those were used. I want to do a very special thank you to the Benson United Methodist Church and Hodges Chapel Church. They paid for these, and also thanks to Janelle McCain for making sure the coupons were given to those children who wouldn't be able to attend without the coupon. Our post-Mule Day meeting will be sometime in November, and we continue to reevaluate the event every year and make changes to make it better than the year before. I want to thank all of the volunteers and especially all of town staff for all of their hard work, and it paid off. We're now on to our next events, the Scarecrow Contest, Hallowfest, and Christmas on Maine. As always, we greatly appreciate your support and your dedication to our town. Any questions?
Does anybody have any questions of Loretta?
No. Well, I do have a question. Did any of the people running the carnival, did they complain about the water standing where they were set up out there?
No.
When it rained?
When it rained, I'm sure, but it went away pretty soon, I hope.
Oh, there was water standing real bad. I was going to talk to Kim and the board to see, because we're going to have to do something about the water standing out there. I mean, it's like a pond.
We just submitted for a grant, so that should help alleviate.
Yeah, I got pictures, and like the people riding the Ferris wheel, they were having to go that deep in water.
Well, they didn't let me know, Dean, and I didn't get a chance to get out there, but thank you for letting me know.
Yeah.
So, but they didn't complain. The carnival seemed to do okay, and the kids loved it. And
It was only in certain spots, but I do know the Ferris wheel.
Ferris wheel, yeah.
Yeah, it was bad.
I was still there on Saturday when I came through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
so
And I forgot what night it rained. I think it was Thursday night.
Thursday night it
Thursday
rained
night.
right before
Yeah,
the
'cause we were out
concert.
there, and I got a picture of it with my two my daughter and my nephew.
Yeah.
I do want to share this with you, then I'll sit down. We had some guests from Nashville, Tennessee. Most of y'all know about that. Michelle Capps and the widow of Jimmy Capps, and also Mona Brown, who plays on Larry's Country Diner. And then we also had Gus Arundel, who's known as the Chicken Man, but he owns Springer Mountain Farms Chicken. He flew his private jet into Fayetteville, had a driver waiting, and Mo Mandy.
Close?
Excuse
Okay,
me.
thank you.
Do you, okay.
Keep going.
Okay, I'm sorry. But they had so much, and they rode in the parade. They had so much fun. The first thing I had The first email I had in my inbox on Monday morning was Gus Arundel's administrative assistant wanting to know when next year's Mule Days was, because he's coming back. So we made a great impression on those people, and it's very positive publicity for our town of Benson. So, thank you.
Thank you.
And another reason why I was bringing up the Puddle Waters, they run generators, and I went all over looking at where them lines were going through, so.
Yeah.
Why don't you introduce the new employees, and then we'll get started with the meeting.
Okay, Matt, do you wanna go ahead and do, parks?
Evening, everybody. I am very excited to introduce these two guys. First one is Brandon Beasley. He is a Benson native. He went to South Johnson. He was a teacher and coach at Hobton, and he is now our new athletic assistant. And I'm extremely glad to introduce him.
Thank y'all for having me here. I'm very excited to work for the town, and I hope to continue working with y'all in the future.
Right?
Thank you.
Good.
And the next person I'm going to introduce is Will Junard. He is also a Benson native, went to South Johnson, and this makes me really old. Both of these guys grew up playing in our programs, so for the last however many years. But if the last couple weeks are any indication of the next however many years, these guys are going to have two good careers. So.
I just want to say thank y'all for giving me the opportunity, and I'm ready to make some stuff happen.
Thank you.
All right, and then we have two new additions to the electric department, so Glenn and Dylan, if y'all wanna come up. So the first one is Glenn Norris. He is our new class lineman A. He worked with Lee Electric for 6 years and then moved into a foreman's role for Lee Electric for an additional 7 years. He comes to us with his journeyman lineman card, so we're really excited to have him join our team, and he's got some leadership behind him, so we're ready to see what he can do.
Very good.
Thank y'all. Thank y'all for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Yep.
All right, and then we have Dylan Allen. Dylan was actually part of the class of 2020 Johnston County Line Workers Academy and here in Benson. After graduation from South Johnston, he attended Nash Community College and graduated with an electric line construction technology as a Line Tech 3. So we are excited that he has joined our crew as well, and he comes from the town of Selma. So he's got some experience in municipality work as well. So it's really good. You want to say anything?
Thank y'all for the opportunity.
Yeah.
Thank
Thank you for coming, yeah.
Yep.
We're gonna miss it. Now, are we full?
We are full. Full in parks, full in electric.
Good deal.
Bring order in the chamber. Let's bow our heads for prayer. Our most precious Heavenly Father, be with us tonight as we are going through some changes, and our meeting will be different. But you know what we have on our mind and what we have on our agenda. So lead us and guide us and direct it in the way that you would have us go. And forgive us of our sins, and be with those that are sick, that have people in the hospital that need healing, and bless all the ones that are here that came, and we most especially appreciate the commissioners and for Max for changing his plans to come. So be with us, guide us, and direct us in everything we do. In God's name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Let's stand and pledge allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated. I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
I make that motion.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Is this the last year for the hotel, Kim?
Yeah.
Okay. I make that motion that we approve the consent agenda.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Under public comments, we have two presentations we're gonna make with proclamations, and the first one, it will be the Fire Prevention Week. Who's gonna come and take this for the town? I get fussed out when I don't do these things up here, so I'm gonna do them up here. All right, you don't want to be fussed at. This is Proclamation 164/2022, Fire Prevention Week. Whereas the town of Benson, North Carolina is committed to endure the safety and security of all living in and visiting Benson. And whereas fire is a serious public safety concern both locally and nationally, and homes are locations where people are the greatest risk from fire. And whereas home fire killed more than 2,580 people in the United States in 2020. According to the National Fire Protection Association, NFPA, and the Fire Department of the United States responded to the 356,500 home fires, and whereas smoke alarms sense smoke well before we can, or as you can, alerting you in the danger in the event of fire which you may have as little as 2 minutes to escape safely. And whereas working smoke alarm cut the risk of dying in reported home fires in half, and Benson residents should be sure everyone in the home understands the sound of the alarms and know how to respond. And whereas Benson residents who have planned and practiced a fire escape plan more prepared and are therefore more likely to survive a fire. Residents should practice their home fire escape drill at least twice a year during the day and at night. And whereas Benson residents will make sure their smoke and CO alarms meet the needs for all their family members, including those with sensory or physical disabilities. And whereas working smoke alarms cut the risk of dying in reported home fires in half and should be installed in every sleeping room, outside each separate sleeping area, and on every level of the home. When the smoke alarm sounds, every occupant of the home should respond by going outside immediately to the designated meeting place. And whereas Benson's first responders are dedicated to reducing the occurrence of home fires and home fire injuries through prevention and protection education. Our residents are responsive to the public education measures and can take action to increase their safety from fire, especially in their homes. And whereas the 2022 Fire Prevention Week theme, Fire Won't Wait, plan your escape, and work to educate everyone about simple but important actions that can take, including preparing a home fire escape plan to keep themselves and those around them safe from home fires. Therefore, I, Jerry M. Medley, Mayor of the Town of Benson, do hereby proclaim October 9 through 15, 2022, Fire Prevention Week in the Town of Benson, and I urge all citizens to plan and practice a home fire escape and to support the many public safety activities and efforts of the Town of Benson and surrounding areas, fire and emergency service. Adopted this 11th day of October 2022, Jerry M. Medley and Angie Thornton. Congratulations. Yes, sir. Appreciate it. You can talk now.
y'all for this? I mean, I know it happens every year, but we're pretty busy nowadays, so.
Well, I'll talk then.
Who you talk?
Alan is probably in our scan of imagination, the best fireman in the state of North Carolina. And our fire department has grown over the years since he's been there. And we appreciate all the hours that you spend and all the hours that your folks spend in doing that. So let's really encourage the population to do the things that we talk about in the proclamation so that they'll be prepared. This is really close to my heart because one of my close friends at the Boys and Girls Home at Lake Walkmore, he was fairly new, was doing a tremendous job there with the kids, had some new programs going, and he was renting a house while he was getting the house built. And the house caught fire, no smoke alarms in the building, and he and his dog both burned up. And that really hurt the kids in that school. And so we can do things to make it better for us, and let's please do that. The other one is a proclamation for Public Power Week. Who's going to come? We're all going to come. Come on, all of you come. There's a couple of things I want to say before we read this proclamation. You know, we think about the town of Benson and what our fire department does. But what we don't think about is, what are we? And we're part of the public power associations of the world. And so we're really involved with a big group of people. We have our own electric system, but we're still part of that biggest part that really lights the whole United States in certain ways. Proclamation 165, 2022, Public Power Week. Whereas public power is a crucial component in cities and towns across North Carolina, driving the overall health of communities by providing unmatched electricity reliability, affordable and sustainable power, excellent local service, and boy, that's really true there, and essential jobs in the communities. Whereas North Carolina, more than 70 public power cities and towns are among more than 2,000 across the country, providing electricity with reliability ratings of 99.98% to nearly 1.3 million North Carolinians. Whereas many of North Carolina public power cities and towns have been electric providers for more than 100 years, assisting their communities through boom times as well as paramedic and economic downturns, maintaining life-saving electricity to homes and businesses. Whereas North Carolina public power communities are part of a mutual aid network that spans the state and country, providing invaluable support during times of hurricanes and other natural disasters while maintaining a superior safety record. Whereas North Carolina public power providers are essential community assets that contribute to the well-being of the community, and whereas irreplaceable economic development opportunities, and whereas North Carolina public power utilities are dependable institutions that provide excellent service, valuable energy solutions, and a commitment to community. Whereas the town of Benson recognizes Public Power Week and commends the public power cities and towns across our state for the outstanding contribution to our communities. Now therefore, I, Jerry Medlin, Mayor of the town of Benson, hereby proclaimed October the 2nd through the 8th, 2022 as Public Power Week in the town, and commends its observation to all citizens adopted this third day of October 2022. So congratulations to all you guys, and it's a situation where we've got the opportunity of getting things fixed real quick, while people in Benson that are part of Duke Power, don't get fixed, and you wave at them as you go by, but, we appreciate all the job that you guys do, and congratulations.
Thank you very much.
You can talk if you want to.
Yeah, I'd like to thank the board, first and foremost, for allowing us to build this team that we have today.
And for that new truck.
Yes, sir, and for the new truck. That's very nice, thank you. Worked out well during the hurricane.
Glenn, we appreciate you.
Thank you for all y'all do. Y'all do a
Yeah.
good job.
Thank y'all very much.
Yeah, I went to a meeting, about a 3-hour meeting last Thursday, Electric Cities, and the whole meeting was nothing but praising our local guys that are doing the work. So,
It means a lot, thank you.
and the hurricane showed it. People can complain about how much it cost, but my lights flickered, my business flickered, I had power. So, I've got friends that live right close to me that was out for 24 hours, and that's just a difference.
Yes, sir. We hope you don't let you down.
Yeah, you won't.
Y'all
I'll
have a good
just
night.
stick
Thank you.
together.
Let's give these two groups a big hand. Individuals wishing to address the board are asked to provide their name and address for the record. Please come forward if it's somebody that wants to talk to the board. Don't be bashful, come if you want to. While nobody's coming, I close that part, the public comments part of the board. I ask the board if there's any questions they have of the department reports that's in the packet.
And they were short. There's not a lot there. I think a lot of department heads are used to giving them at the second board meeting, which we didn't have in September, so you'll probably have double reports at the next board meeting
Okay.
for some of these departments.
Is the chief back there?
Greg's not.
Greg? Well, I'm just gonna say to the officers that are back there, I've noticed a big pickup on people on the side of the road that are being pulled for speeding. Thankfully, I'm not been one of them yet, but I do wanna say thank y'all for picking that up. I've seen a difference over the past month or two, and it's good to see those stops, so thank you very much for that.
Alan, couldn't you go ahead and give a report on October, our busiest month ever?
September, not October.
September, yeah, you're right.
It'll be in the next.
We're not through October yet.
It'll be in the next.
Okay.
I tell you, we had 142 calls.
We're now going to talk about TXT 2022-02, and I'll ask Aaron to come forward.
Good evening, Commissioners, Mayor. I typically have a presentation for you on the screen, but this is so straightforward that I think it's a sentence that we are proposing to change in our Unified Development Code. It addresses non-conforming uses. And so in our nonconformity section, just to give you just a quick definition of the nonconformities, that's a legal pre-existing use or structure or lot that adheres to the specifications of the development code. When a property or a use or a structure or a lot does not conform to the current standards of the code, it becomes a nonconformity. And so Chapter 156720 addresses all nonconformities. We're looking specifically to amend the text that addresses nonconforming uses. Currently, the nonconforming use may continue for up to 180 days after the ceasing or abandonment of that use. We are proposing to reduce that to 90 days. And also within that section, it states that it's evidenced by the disconnection of electrical services. We're proposing to take that out, that specific language about disconnection of utility service, electrical services, in the proposed text amendment. The reasoning is because sometimes properties or that have a nonconformity may not be a town of Benson electrical customer, and also if the electrical service is left in service, but the property has been vacated and that use has been abandoned, but the lights have been kept on, that use can continue. And so we want to look specifically, has that use been abandoned? Have they vacated that property? And if so, if it within 90 days, we would like to see that use and that property be brought into compliance. And that is the reasoning behind this text amendment. It was brought forth by the planning department, and the planning board did hear this request last week. They did recommend approval as presented, and I would be happy to answer any questions that you all may have.
Why 90 days?
Why
not go 30?
Well, we still, you know, I mean, we want to just cut it in half. We felt that 190 days, 80 days was a lot, 6 months. Reducing that to 90 days would still allow a potential business to locate in that property, but 180 days may be a lengthy time to allow that use to continue. If we truly want to phase out nonconformities and bring them into compliance, 30 days may be a little aggressive. So somewhere in the middle, 90 days.
What was it?
Right now, it's 180 days.
Aaron, does this apply to both residential and commercial properties? And the reason I'm just thinking, if we have tons of residences where people are actually residing in properties that are now be rezoned in the town to commercial, if one of those residences were to burn down, this policy would only give them 90 days to build that structure back, or would they even be allowed to build that structure back if it were to burn down?
That would be addressed in a separate section. So if it is, if the property is a single-family residence, it's owner-occupied, it could be rebuilt in the same footprint of that property. Now, if it is, let's say, a non-owner occupied and it's a tenant, then it falls into that category of nonconformity within 90 days.
Well, was there not something UDO or something 4 or 5 years ago, even before you came on, wasn't it, we had such a problem with renters leaving and utilities left on, and the town was getting stuck with real big bills. I'm wondering, like this 90 days, somebody moves out for 90 days and leaves their air conditioner on or whatever, and we don't cut power.
This is not related.
It's not related?
No.
Very good.
This is
Thank
basically
you.
like, say like, what's the building over there I'm thinking about?
Church?
Huh?
Where?
It's a church.
Church?
Was a church.
Downtown?
Downtown?
No, it was, God, across from CIGA's old, the Holland building.
Okay.
So he gave a special use permit for it to be a church. So now we'd be reducing it down to 90 days for it to go back the way it was.
If it has a special use permit that the board granted, it's under its own separate
Oh, it is?
order, correct. Now, if
This would be like the church that's in like a downtown church. If they move down and cease to
Oh,
be doing
okay.
a church for 90 days, if we approve this, then they can no longer put a church back in that building.
If it's longer
Correct.
than 90 days.
Well, how long does a special use permit go?
as a special use permit runs with the land, as long as that use is in operation. Now, if they abandon that use, and it, you know, that, and they want to put something in else there, they can amend that special use permit. But it's the special use permit is sort of governed under its own terms versus this use, because it's not necessarily a nonconformity. It's more or less a use that was granted because of a special use permit.
Okay, I got you.
Yes, this would be more on the general side. Let's say if you have a property that has always been utilized as a single-family residential, but the property is zoned commercial. If someone vacates that property, even if they have left the utility service, the electrical service in place, if they have abandoned it, then 90 days would be the allowable time if you all see fit, to allow that use to continue. Once the 90 days expires and no one has occupied that space, then the current zoning uses would be applicable. And if single-family residential is not a use within that district, it could not revert back to residential.
Aaron, how would this apply? And you're gonna pick up on what I'm dropping out here. So from what I have recently learned, is that when we rezone a property from residential to commercial, say from residential to B2, that doesn't change the zoning, or it doesn't change the use of the structure that is on the property. So we've got properties that we have rezoned to commercial that still have a residential house on the property. And the county is not allowing us to put commercial uses in it because on their tax card it's a residential structure. But I can't put a resident in it because the land is rezoned to commercial. How does this fix that?
That's two separate codes, so it doesn't necessarily fix it, and that's something that's very well to consider, because you could potentially have a site that you cannot go back to residential, and someone that may would like to utilize that space for commercial, but it may be cost prohibitive to convert it from a single family occupancy per the building code to the commercial code. So the more intense that use changes, the more building code requirements would come into place, and that is a consideration. That that anyone that would like to occupy that space would need to bring it up to the commercial code. If it could be, that you could write into your ordinance that if that use has not been occupied within 12 months or however long, that it can, there's a special clause or something written in that you can, revert back to the previous use. If that's something that you would like to consider, but ultimately you want to phase out nonconformities and bring it into compliance with your adopted plans and policies, with your vision. So it may sit there a little longer, but you may be waiting for that right opportunity for that space to be utilized with the right tenant or owner tenant to utilize it for the district that the town has deemed most appropriate for that location.
Can you make that change that he's talking about with this proposal here?
I guess my only fear is if we go to a 90-day nonconformity and say that we do rezone a parcel that has a residence on it and rezone it commercial, after 90 days that house can no longer be used as a residence, nor can it meet building code to be commercial. So therefore we have a vacant structure on a lot that the owner can't do anything with legally.
Potentially, yes. You
And
could
we've done
have that
We
situation.
have those parcels in town right now.
We've got a bunch of parcels like that in town right
Say
now.
what?
This just shortens the time period. I think you could get in that situation already before you've got it drafted, right?
Right, if the 180 days
It's a
elapses.
well-made point. This just shortens the time period to get you to
Well,
that.
I just wonder
No
if
man's
the
land.
people that own rental property here, if they had a house that burned down, are they gonna be able to mitigate that to rebuild within 90 days? And go through the insurance process and do all of that? And you said that if it's not owner occupied, they don't have the ability to rebuild anyway. Is that what you
Right,
said?
if they're, and I'll have to look, let's see. If a non-conforming use is damaged by fire, explosion, flood, or other calamity to the extent that 50% its current or equalized value. It shall not be restored unless it comply with the use provisions of this chapter, except the non-conforming owner-occupied single-family dwellings may be restored. Multifamily development approved prior to 1996 may be restored in a manner which does not increase any nonconformity, density, setback, or spacing. Approved to the original site plan upon granting of a special use permit by the Town of Board of Commissioners. So yes, it has to be a single-family dwelling to be built back.
And owner occupied.
Correct, owner-occupied.
So let me make sure I'm understanding this correctly.
Yes.
Okay, I own a rental house
Mhm.
right here in town. It's zoned for commercial. It's been vacant over a year from now, from a year, 365 days. You telling me I can't rent to somebody because it's commercial?
Correct.
If it's been vacant for
Crap.
365 days, then the time has already elapsed, because right now
That's the way
it's
always-
180 days. And so if it's been 365, then it already has reverted back to the current standards.
You have to ask
You
for.
have a lot of properties like that.
You would need it to be, yes, you would need it to be rezoned to allow it to be a conforming use.
But then if you get it rezoned, it's not gonna be in the land use and all that stuff, because it shows commercial.
And that doesn't negate you to rezone it. That doesn't mean that it cannot be rezoned. You have to look, you can amend, when you do a rezoning, you are essentially amending your zoning map, and you can amend that and to place that in a new zoning district. If, let's say, the uses surrounding it have been residential, you take into consideration that it's been residential for 35 years, and you like to, and you have someone that would like to occupy that space as a rental or as a residential unit. You know, I look at it on the flip side that you have valuable commercial areas close to downtown, in a highly commercial area that are zone commercial, that have been utilized as residential. And does the town want to continue that residential use there, or would you like to allow that to open up to commercial opportunities?
Is there ever anything in the UDO where it separates this non-conforming from residential and commercial? Personally, I'm all in favor of the downtown area. If we've got a non-conforming use in a business, that they need to be overturned.
Mhm.
But I'm worried that we're gonna put people that own residential property in a hardship if they're, I don't know of any insurance company in the world that you can mitigate a fire with and rebuild a structure within 90 days, much less maybe not even 180
No.
days.
You can scratch
And
it
so,
about 30 days.
I don't know the,
No, and if they have, let's say they have obtained a building permit, that's going to stop the clock on that time. So if they've obtained building permits on day 89.
if it's owner occupied, but
If it's on-
if it's a rental home, if it's or a child that's living in a home that's in the name of their parents, then they would not be able to obtain that building permit because they would automatically be non-conforming according to this.
Correct.
Have y'all seen how many houses this would be affected by this?
I don't have a count. I can think of at least, you know, maybe a handful of houses that are zone commercial that have been utilized as residential, and so.
When we rezone it, who is the authority that, because apparently from dealing with the county and us on the issue I'm alluding to that you know about, who is the responsible authority for when we rezone a parcel from residential to commercial, for changing that on the I mean, the structure does not get changed when we rezone that land at all. So if you have a residential structure sitting on a residential lot and we rezone that lot to commercial, the structure still maintains a residence, but you can't use it as a residence on a commercial lot per the county unless the structure is changed to commercial. But you're saying in order for it to go from residence to commercial, it's got to meet the commercial building code. Is that correct?
Yes, it does. So, and it depends on what type of occupancy you are. If it's an office space, if it's assembly, if it's a a school institution. It depends on what type of use that building, that structure will occupy, and that will determine. And you do have the existing building code as well, so it will determine within that building code what needs to be done to bring it into compliance. But that's separate from a land use designation. So whenever we do a rezoning, we send it to the county to update on the zoning map. We've never sent, and I don't believe there's really any communication with the tax office until there is some type of work being done, some type of improvements to a structure, and that's residential, commercial, or if it's a new construction, if an addition has been added, that usually prompts some type of report. When we had inspections in our department, we would send a monthly report to the tax office letting them know of all of the type of improvements that a structure has undergone. But outside of that, when the rezoning changes, we typically don't send them any information.
Any other conversation?
We have the kickoff meeting for the UDO team this month. When is the expected finish date for that firm to finish up our UDO recommendation?
We are projecting about 12 months, so next year, hopefully by October, we are at the latest. We're hoping to have the hearing in September of next year.
Why don't we do this? I know I'm watching William. He's got some questions about what's going on. But let's open the public hearing and see who we got. See what we get from that, and we can come back to the board to finish up. Is that
Yes.
okay?
Sounds good.
Sure, thank you.
Okay. I now open the public hearing on TXT 2022-02. Anyone that is in favor of this, come forward. Anybody that wants to speak in favor, come forward. Anyone that wants to speak in opposition, come forward. Anybody that wants to speak in opposition, come forward. No one coming either in the positive or negative. I now close the public hearing. Now, what's the wishes of the board?
I would like to know how many properties that we have in non-conforming and how many this is going to affect before we start making changes. So I make a motion that we table this to the next meeting to give me time to get that data from Aaron.
Any other discussion? Motion on the floor. All in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Ayes have it. Thank you.
Can you pull that data and me and you get together maybe one day next week? Thank you, Aaron.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Update on voluntary annexation petition by 550 Cash LLC, Angela Thompson Thornton.
Okay, we can really discuss these together for Crosspoint and 550 Cash. I've gone through, and there's certain criteria that has to be met in order for the petition to go forward. And all of it everything's been met except for the utilities. There's been a lot of verbal agreement about the utilities. But I think you can go ahead and set a hearing date. If you want to set it in November, that's fine. But I think we need to get and have a memo of understanding concerning utilities so that the developer would be responsible for tying onto our lines. They would be responsible for that. So I think it's fine to go ahead, like I said, but we would, in the meantime, we would have that memo of understanding done for both Cross Point and 550 Cache.
Well, that, their latest drawings, when they split up 500,000 and 500,000, 560, they've got, on the opposite side of the road, they've got the utilities drawn in there, and it's on the land that they own.
Right.
And there was some discussion about whether we were going to pay or they were going to pay, but we've been clear that that's their responsibility to.
And I think like Angie's saying, those discussions, and it sounds like, because we met on this earlier in this week, it sounds like from what we can tell, there is agreement and understanding, but I don't know that, at least what Angie has on her file, and it's her duty to certify all this to you before you can proceed, have a public hearing, and then vote whether or not to annex these properties, these non-contiguous properties. Before we proceed, well, we'll proceed to go ahead and set the public hearing, but between now and then, we're going to get something, at least some sort of a basic memorandum of understanding with those applicants.
I think we do that.
This is what's going to be the situation with your utilities, because Angie's gone through the rest of the list in the general statute and every other requirement they've met. So that's kind of the only.
I don't have any problem with that.
Let me ask you something. On a situation like the 550, they want to be brought into the city limits, annexed, voluntary annexation, because they need the water and sewer. What do we have? I mean, anybody that needs to come into the city limits need to be getting their utilities from us. I mean, why wouldn't they? This voluntary annexation, they're doing this because they need the water and sewer. Correct?
Yeah.
I would assume that's the
Okay.
primary
reason.
Same thing.
drive.
Same
They couldn't
thing.
get water and sewer without annexation.
Right.
Same thing across 95. Okay, on the next one we're looking at. The only difference is, I think that we need to look at it across the board. Somebody come up and want to be annexed to get these utilities, then it ought to be that we get all of it. I mean,
You mean electric as well?
electrical,
There's-
the electrical out there, I've ridden, I've looked at it. It's 100 yards off, air 3-phase power, taking this whole thing, and Duke Power is 500 to 1,000 feet away.
We talked about this earlier too, and that's one of the reasons why Angie can't, with that particular applicant, 550 Cache, we can't sit here, or Angie can't even sit here and say everything looks good, they've satisfied all the statutory requirements, because from our understanding, and even earlier today, I don't know that they are certain yet. They have not made a 100% final decision as to whether they're going to go with the town or Duke Progress, right? So, and we need to have that nailed down. We'd love for them to come and be.
Say that again.
I don't, from what we were talking about earlier today, I don't know that 550 Cache has decided.
Western
Because you know
Hills.
somebody.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because y'all were in.
We're
we
working on
understand- right.
Yeah, we're working on territorial rights right now to get their electric. Western Hills was agreeable to do electric as long as Duke will allow us to. So we're working through that right now.
How could Duke not allow us to when we're adjoining their property?
You got territorial rights, and so we have a good leg to stand on because that line is right there, and they're annexing into the town. So we actually have a guy that's coming
I think tomorrow.
tomorrow
Let
from
me ask
that's
you
going to help us
Careful
with
what
that.
you're talking about now, because we don't, the town of Benson or Duke Power or nobody else has the authority to change who that is going to provide power.
We can.
That's set. That's set in 1969 when Colonnade had some Benson and some Duke Power. And when we met with Duke Power, they said, we'll trade with you, but other than that, that's the only way we'll do business.
Well,
Same thing with South River. They moved that substation and redid those poles out there so they wouldn't have poles in the line where Edgewater was going to be. But I don't know any way that we can exchange power.
we are going to try. We are going to try to talk to Duke and get them in our power grid because they're right there, like you said. There is a three-phase line right there.
That's right.
They're annexing into the town. We are going to meet with Pointer Sproul tomorrow to discuss that very thing. And I've already talked to Electricities about it.
You're talking about the houses going to be built on Honeycutt, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because Mostech is being on, what is it, Woodman Road right there?
Yeah,
But I reckon it's Duke Energy.
Mhm.
Yeah, they've been
It is.
installing it, so.
But there's a three-phase line exactly behind where they are.
Yeah, but the
That
lines
if
they have
if
are not
we
three-phase.
cross
Yeah, there's.
I-95, we don't have the power over there. We don't have,
Right.
Unless we build a substation, we don't have the power to provide.
Right. We cannot do, we
That's
can't.
why
No, cross-
South River ran their lines down the edge of I-95 so that we would have access.
Right, as far as Cross Point, we know that the South River is gonna
Right.
do their electric. The one that
Western
that's-
Hills is a
Yeah,
possibility.
is the 550 cash is where we're seeing about if it's
Well,
gonna
I
be
thought that's
us or
what we were
Duke.
talking about.
No, we're talking
No.
about Western
Right,
Hills.
We're talking about 550.
At the end of the day,
Okay.
you're just telling us that y'all want to make sure y'all can get
Yes.
us those answers before we vote on it in a public
Right.
hearing.
Right,
So
we
we
don't-
need to know whether or not we're going to take them without giving them power, or whether we're going to take them with giving them
That's-
power.
Yeah, but,
Yes,
but-
that's all.
But my
To Will's
question,
question, though, I was saying.
my
I
question
don't know that you
is,
can make-
if somebody comes up and asks, why isn't it just cut and dry, like going to Four Oaks, I'm gonna put a commercial building in, I want to be brought in? Well, the only way you can get our water and sewer is to be brought in, and that's just cut and dry. So they don't have to go through the hoops and stuff. I don't know, is that taken care of the new UDO, or what happens there when somebody comes up just like this and says, hey, we want to be brought in? No, we want your water and sewer, but we don't want to be brought in yet.
It's
The
not-
question is, if they be brought in, they have to come in on the utilities we can provide. We don't know if we can
Right.
provide them power or not.
Yeah,
If
there's
we can't provide
territorial
them power,
rights.
Then we can make it that they have to take our power to be able to be brought in.
Right.
We don't know the answer to that question yet.
And let me just bring up another point too, is if, let's say they couldn't get power for some reason from South River or Duke, maybe it was just an impossibility physically, there wasn't lines, Duke wouldn't run it to them. If they came to you to annex, that would be a big thing you'd have to consider as to whether or not to approve that is. If you annex them, you have to give them everything that your typical, regular, contiguous town residents or town customers get. So if you annex them and you couldn't give them power, you'd have to figure out some way. So in other words, if you couldn't give them power and they couldn't get it from some other source, you really couldn't annex them because you couldn't satisfy that requirement of the statute to give them everything. But if they can get one of the utilities that we otherwise provide from another source, we can't make them use us. I think that was sort of your question. We can't make them use our
But if
electricity.
they can't get their utilities from anybody but us, we run right in front of them, and they do not want to be a part of the town.
Then we don't annex them in.
Well, yeah, we can't make them
Then we
annex.
cannot annex them in.
Yeah,
We're already there.
Well, we don't know if we can give them power yet. or
We
not.
ain't talking about that. We're talking about Benson.
In
Okay.
general.
But they want the sewer for the lot side.
They want the
Right.
sewer and the water.
Yeah,
and we
I
want
understand
we
that.
want to make them have power, but we don't know if we can make them have power yet. So like,
And the
one
bottom line
on
is that
Cross
they-
Point, we can't give them power, so we have to decide whether we want
Yeah,
to take
but
them for
let's-
just the water and the sewer.
Let's look at them and let's look at everybody else that is coming in. We can give, across the bridge, we can give them water and sewer.
Right.
I'm not talking about their power.
Okay.
I mean, they've got different lines. We can't run power over there.
Right.
We can't supply it. But I'm talking about right here in Benson, that we give all the utilities to, and they're not a part of the city limits of Benson.
That's happening right now.
Yes, it's happening right now.
Are you talking about Colonnade?
No.
Well, who are you talking about?
Let's go down to PGI. Let's go down to the buildings there. Let's go down to the warehouses on the other side of PGI. We provide them electrical, water, and sewer, and they are not in the city limits.
PGI, I'd have to go back and look. Hold on.
PGI's got Duke Power.
They're Duke Power.
I understand that. I didn't say that.
Yeah.
Go down there and go across from PGI. How about the pallets? How about the warehouses down there?
I would have to go and look, but now like I said, there's territorial rights that Duke has on the system. So, and that were established years ago. Weston Hills, in this case, has that three-phase line, and they want to have they see the value of public
Okay,
power,
we're
so
not
they
talking
want
about
power.
them. I'm talking about
When they were approved, whoever was sitting on the board
Yeah.
chose to provide those utilities without making them pay. And we can't go back.
We can't go back now and change that, just like
We
you
can
can't
move
change
it
the
going
fact that Benton Card Company has Duke.
We need to do it going forward, and I'm asking, how do we get there?
Well, I think
Okay,
you're
I know
already
we
there.
can't do it
By the way it works,
tonight.
it would only happen like that if the board said, we'll run it to you anyway, whether water, sewer, electric, whatever it was, we'll run it to you without you annexing into the town. And I don't know what or why that scenario would ever come to pass. It could, I guess it sounds like it has, but in the future, you have no obligation to do that. So if someone comes to you and says, look, I just want to be a customer of your utility, I don't want to annex to the town,
Hotel incentive to get PGI here.
you can just tell them no.
They may have done that as an incentive.
But yeah, if someone wants your utility services and they don't want to annex, you can just say.
You gotta go back and look at the MOU to see what you did with Edgewater, and that's gonna apply. We had a guy in a meeting with Duke Power, and the guy came from Charlotte, that had a program that he put up on everything that the town of Benson had. And he showed exactly who had the power that was given to them in 1969. And he said the only way you can change it is to go to the Utilities Commission and get them to do it. So I think you better kind of set this thing aside a little bit before you go any further. I know what is true with Edgewater, because they're coming into town and they're gonna have water and sewer from us, and they're gonna have power from South River.
I think the only thing we're talking about, back to the beginning of this, when Angie was presenting, is just having something in writing from them where there's an understanding that they're gonna provide their own lines to tap onto our existing.
Right, it's
And
not
then-
going to be us having to
And then
pay for
eventually,
it. It
once
is
the
the developer.
decision is made, whichever way it gets made with 550 Cash's application, as far as their electrical, that they just need to spell that out, and if it ends up being us providing that service, great, and
That
if they,
should be in our UDO, though. Our
if they-
UDO should state that new development, they're required to pay to tap on our system, correct?
It doesn't state that the developer, is responsible. It says that they're responsible for the installing the improvements, but it doesn't specifically say that they're responsible for getting to our system.
So we need
To the
pay-
edge of their lot.
Right, and then who's gonna pay for it from the edge of their lot to,
Wherever
if
it
it's
goes.
100 feet,
Right.
if it's 500 feet.
But we can update
to our
that
line.
as a text amendment, right?
We could, I think that whole section, that's why it's vital for our UDO, our whole entire subdivision section and other, I think it needs to be referenced probably in like our sewer, water ordinance by reference. I think we're gonna be getting into a lot of cross-referencing and language, and I would say, we make sure we get that.
I think it's best just to have something, an understanding with them in writing before you vote on the
Or even if
annexation.
we vote, do we not make that a contingency and say that we
Sure.
approve the annexation based on the fact that you're required to pay the
Yeah,
developer?
that you're gonna pay the expense of whatever it costs you to tap onto our system.
Tap onto
Right.
our system.
Sure, I just think it's best that, these are two pretty major projects.
So-
We don't wanna, go into it with a difference of mind than what they think, right?
Agreed.
So you-
And some of these discussions that have been had, especially with 550 cash, I know a lot of that was undertaken by Tim, sounds like.
Yeah.
That that goes back some months or over a year,
Yeah,
year and a half.
he's been doing this for
So-
over a year.
And now that there's sort of a different crew working on the finalities of this, we wanna make sure it's all right.
So, Kim, that what we're talking about, that is, not our territory, correct?
Western Hills?
The Honeycutt, the,
It is not, but we have a good leg to stand on with the fact that they want to annex, and we have a three-phase line right behind it.
here's what I'm gonna tell you.
Mhm.
Cause I've done it, you know, we've done it with utility companies,
Mhm.
where I work for. Unless you got something to trade, they'll do it. But you gotta think, they gotta answer to stakeholders, they project growth.
Mhm.
So if you ain't got nothing to trade them, they're not just gonna give you 200 customers.
That's exactly right.
So they're not, that would decrease they got stakeholders, so just be prepared, I don't think you're gonna get it.
Well, and it's not tomorrow, it's Monday, but when I have that meeting with them on Monday, I'll follow up with everybody and let them know how it went.
Ultimately, when this comes back to you, I think the two things you need to, this is informational, number one, and then does the board want Angie and Aaron, Kim, and myself, all that's working on it, to go ahead and set, I guess tentatively to a certain extent, but the public hearing date for the first meeting in November or December, whatever the board thinks, because there's very particular timing of the notice of that public hearing that has to go out. So that's the other thing. I think we
As long as you can answer that question, because I don't wanna vote until I know the answer to that question.
Well, if we don't have an answer to that, that would be a reason to push it out.
That's
further,
right, that's right. So if you get the answer to that question on Monday, then absolutely, I think we can push it forward. But
Okay.
I won't ask you that question.
I'll let y'all know how the meeting goes.
All right.
So do they need a vote, or do they just need to say?
No, I don't think you need to vote, but
Just say, if we've got everything, we'll, right now, set it for the first meeting in November.
is that what the
Is that
board
everybody?
wants to do?
Are y'all good with that?
As
And
long
then-
as you
Yeah, but if
feel
there's some
comfortable
question
bringing
about it,
Yes,
you
we'll
should
have,
vote on it.
because if not,
it.
we're.
If not, we'll table
They're
it.
not voting.
Right, yeah. We're
Yeah,
not gonna do it
the only
unless we
question
have
we're
that.
asking is, does the board want to go ahead and tentatively now prepare to have the public hearing the first meeting in November?
I think it's only fair to the customer that if we've got the data we need to answer the question, that we go ahead and move forward as quickly as we can.
Okay. Sounds good, thank y'all.
So where we are we on 550?
We're on, for both of them, we're gonna, the public hearing will be for the first meeting in November.
Provided,
That we get what we
right.
need.
Well, I know what the story is for the other one.
Y'all get the information, bring it back.
We will.
New business.
All right.
Is there a motion on the floor?
No, sir.
That doesn't need to
Uh-uh.
be. We need to go to new business.
Hmm?
We
We're
just
on
need to
new
go, we're on new
business right
business.
now.
That was just an update. They don't need a motion, they said.
Consider approval of the advisory board appointments. Angie.
Okay, the first one we have is Paul Boucher, and this is for the Board of Adjustments. He's a resident. We have 2 vacancies. The Board of Adjustments have not met since I've been here. I think it's probably been, 3 or 4 years? 2018. The last time they met was 2018. And so we have 2 vacancies, and they actually have a meeting coming up, right? So we've got.
They don't meet unless there's a reason.
Right, and, so we got 2. The first one is Paul Boucher, resident. I just need to have a motion to approve him
I
to
make
the
a
advisory
motion.
board.
We approve both.
Yeah.
Okay. And the other one was Charlie Harper. He's for the ETJ, so we got
I'll
a,
entertain a motion to approve the 2 that's been
It's on the floor. I made it.
recommended board of adjustment.
Motion's made.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Financials.
Okay, at the end of August, the town stands at 13.22% in revenues and 17.78% in expenses. Does anybody have any questions?
We're still waiting on a lot of taxes to come in, apparently.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
Usually you'll have them all by January, February.
Yeah, because
Entertain a motion.
I make a motion, we approve the financials.
All in favor, say aye. Opposed, no. Consider approval of budget amendment number 1. Angie?
Okay, this is, the fire department got a COVID grant in the amount of $10,000, and then the Department of Insurance also did a supplemental grant, for 35, so it's a total of $45,000, and we just need to transfer, this money into their equipment line item. So this is what the budget amendment is for.
These were at a zero match too, weren't they?
Mm-hmm.
Good
Yeah.
job. I make a motion, we approve budget amendment number 1.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no.
All right, thank y'all.
All right,
All right, thank you, Mayor. So I'll be real brief on this. This is coming before you, just some background, because we've got a potential applicant that wants to co-locate some utility structures in our rights of way. But really, this has been something that's been discussed, certainly with myself and Tim, for several years. It's a generic policy to deal with anything from one of y'all wanting to put in a more elaborate, maybe landscaping feature around your mailbox, to somebody wanting to bury 1,000 linear feet of coaxial cable or something like that in along the street, along the right of way, utility companies, such like. It even kind of overlaps with the small cell wireless application. If you recall, I think last year you approved the application and process and procedure we put before you for those. That's dealt with by a separate statute, by a separate application, but it is also a co-location. So this policy would sort of dovetail with that, but if you're going to do wireless facility, something that's throwing a signal, that's dealt with another set of rules. So it was always something that Tim would come up with when he'd get a minute. He would say, we really need to have a policy. I agree with him, but we never really brought it forward. That's what it's dealing with. If somebody wants to come up and say, look, I want to either temporarily or permanently, I want to put something in your right-of-way, then there needs to be some kind of a procedure for them to do that. From best I can tell, and anyone that I've talked with has looked at this proposed policy that we're putting before you. Those have always been handled in kind of an ad hoc, one-off, case-by-case basis. And although they're all unique, I don't think it does well for you to not have some kind of a procedure and a fee that is set in the fee schedule that's uniform to everybody to deal with these types of things and to create a process so that whether it is just something simple like Mr. Chandler wants to put in some landscaping features around his driveway and mailbox that are technically in the right of way, or whether it is somebody who wants to, a utility company wants to, co-locate in the right of way and dig up a bunch of our right of way and then maybe even cut in the street, et cetera, that there's a process in place. The only thing I don't think that's in here is we discussed and sort of debated as a staff, I did with the staff, a proposed fee. I think $100 was where we kind of settled on. What I've been able to look at with other municipalities, I think on the low side it's 50, on the high side it's 250. A fee that you set for processing of an application should not be, it certainly shouldn't be anything that makes the town money, right? It's not a revenue stream. It should really, and it's not a penalty or a fine, it should be commensurate with the time it takes for the staff to process that application, right? So for whatever department, and this would be going through the Public Works Department initially, they would take in the application because it hits on their purview more than any other department, but it may hit on electrical or it may hit on every town department if it's a big utility wanting to co-locate. but there would be time spent by those different departments to review the application. Then we'd have to get the application submitted, and then we'd have to record it with the Register of Deeds. That's $26 right there to record it. So $100 was sort of where we settled on, I think, as a good foundation. But that's what this is.
With the fee, and I'm just thinking, and that was one of my questions. The fees weren't here, so with the fee, and I'm, excuse me. So if Spectrum wanted to come down Paris Drive and dig up one line that goes across multiple yards, would their fee be the same as if me on Pine Street decided I want to go plant a pear tree in the right of way in my front yard?
Well, theoretically, their fee would be, the base fee would be the same. One thing the fee is completely up to y'all. Although I will say, I think you are, even though you are the board and this is all up to you, you are limited under the law to set that fee at what is commensurate with what it actually costs the town to process the application. Remember, if Spectrum wants to come and run 1,000 feet of line, linear foot of line through a bunch of yards, they've got to run that and do the work. They've got to do all of that. So I mean, they're paying for that work. The fee we charge for the review of the application is just what it costs us to make sure that we're agreeable with it going there, that we don't have other utilities in place that's going to affect. So one thing we did discuss, or I did put forward to the staff, and y'all chime in and tell me you think I'm off base on this, but I think you might want to consider doing similar to what you did with the wireless co-location application last year, and reserving the right to charge up to a set amount of a deposit certainly, especially in utility applications, co-location or encroachment applications, where you feel like you may either have an immense amount of staff time to review it, or you might even not have staff that is capable of reviewing a complex application. Co-location, wireless facility co-location would almost, we don't have an engineer on staff that is going to have the acumen and ability and everything to review those applications. So in those applications, the board automatically approved I think up to a $5,000, wasn't it?
Yeah, it says 5,000 can go up at the town manager's discretion.
Right, so
that's a minimum deposit.
Right, the town says, look, you want to put wireless facilities in town, co-locate on our light poles or whatever other aerial structures we've got, that's fine. Submit your application, and and then you need to give us a certain amount of money. Then we're going to go to our engineer and say, we need you to review this to make sure that this is going to be safe and properly installed, and that this is a good application, and tell us whatever problems there may be with it. And then whatever that costs us, we pay the engineer, and then if there's any kind of leftover, we give it back to the applicant. You might want to consider doing that with these as well, although I will say what this hits more of is buried lines as far as utility stuff, and then private individuals who are just wanting to put things in the right of way.
Where is the breaking point? 'Cause back up a couple of years, if you remember, I think it's kind of settled now, but maybe 4 or 5 years ago, the post office was requiring everybody, once addresses changed, to go and put a mailbox out there. So if the post office changes when somebody buys a residence in-house and says, we're not going to deliver the mail unless you put in a mailbox, are they going to have to come here and pay $100 for a permit to put in a mailbox?
I don't think, you've always allowed mailboxes to go in, right? So technically they're in the right of way. But
Well, what's the
you
difference?
could exclude mailboxes.
And I agree with you on this, but what's the difference in that and the Board of Adjustments? Okay. I go to the Board of Adjustments because I want to use part of the right-of-way. Okay? If you do that, you have to go to the Board of Adjustments to get anything done, because I did that when we built the building that backs up to Taco Bell, which used to be Kentucky Fried Chicken. We went to the board, and we paid a fee to put a sidewalk that was close to their property line.
Were you getting a variance?
We're getting a variance.
Okay, this would not be a variance. Yeah, first of all, it would be way too punitive, I would contend, to require every single, especially individual actor, to go get a variance for the BOA every time they wanted to put in, like some maybe hardscape around their mailbox or.
Well, I think that's what
like a retaining wall.
Yeah,
or
that's
something
what
like
I'm
that.
asking you.
But I think what you had to go through in that was probably more due to the setbacks that you were getting into. This is not, there's setbacks, but this is actually where you're trying to install something on property that legally, technically, does not belong to you, right? Well, in one way of looking at it, it belongs to you, but the town has a right of way. Right, so, yeah, well, it's similar, but this is where you want to encroach in a right of way, not permanently put something, have a vested right to permanently install something. Because that's one of the caveats with this too, is that you could, the town, if you're granted a right of way encroachment permit or agreement, the town grants your request, there's always if you read through the agreement, the town can always go back in there and make you move it if they ever need to, right? And so if they widen the road, or if the town's got to come in and, bury the electrical line because they're going to put them underground now, or the water line that runs down the line, and you've got your big elaborate retaining wall and everything pretty right in front of your house, it's just tough. You're going to have to, it's going to get ripped up.
I just wonder what the starting point. I mean, so like, and I hear about this. So I mean, if I sod my entire yard and I sod my entire front yard because I want my yard to be pretty, and then the town comes and digs up the utility and tears up the sod, the homeowner's expectation is for that sod to be put back, and the town very rarely meets that expectation, right? So, but I mean, are you going to? I mean, what starts the encroachment? What level of disturbance of that area starts that encroachment? If we're not going to include mailboxes, I mean, I don't want my neighbor to have to go pay $100 permit if she wants to go there and plant laripe down the front of her yard or something. I guess is there a fee that says if you do more than this, this is what is going to be defined as an encroachment?
What it contemplates are things that are more permanent nature than vegetation, right? So if you plant something in the right of way in the town, like whether it's pretty grass or a tree or bushes or whatever, if the town needs to come in and rip it all up to put it in a utility line, then they can do it, and they can just shake out a bunch of wheat straw after they leave and throw out a bunch of seeded whatever and say that was of course we would try to, I would think, if we had some project, we'd have a lot of angry people in here if you did that kind of thing. Right. But the town, would basically say, well, you were putting things where you can't really put things with any expectation that they're going to be permanent. This gives you the right to keep them there. There's really no threshold. I don't think that I've when drafting, I didn't really build in a threshold of like a value. But if it's something that's more permanent, other than vegetation or something like that, then this would kick in, and you would really need an encroachment agreement. I mean, the fact of the matter is, a lot of people just do this anyway. Right? They just put in.
But they do
something.
Whether they understand it or not, they do it at the liability of losing whatever they put in.
Absolutely.
So I just wonder, are we charging them up front, and then they're going to have that same liability that you take it away in the future potentially anyway, and then you don't have to replace what you take back? Does that make sense? If I put a gate up in the alley behind my building, you have an easement there. I would assume that would be an encroachment into your easement. Right? And so if I spend $1,500 putting up a gate, that's at my liability. I understand that you can take that gate away, that fence away. And if I want to put it back when you're done, it's my responsibility to spend that money again. Now you're charging me $100 to get a permit for something, and I'm still going to take the liability of losing it, so I'm being charged up front by the town and losing the money to the town if you ever decide to come back and take it.
But you're also catching the bigger actors, which is the reason why this is before you tonight, frankly, is because of the utility.
Well, and that's what I'm trying to push. I'm like, do we need to make this as restrictive on a residential homeowner that's only doing it on one lot versus doing the utility contractors that come in to go down the whole block? I mean, that's the only thing that, and who's going to enforce it? If I do go out there and plant something in the encroachment in my front yard, we're not going to send somebody around to start. What's the penalty? If we do find something and choose to enforce that. So, I don't know.
I read you, and I don't disagree with your points, but if you don't have anything in place.
Right. Well, I agree. We need something for the utility company.
Right. For them, and then also, it's okay. This guy's just got some pretty elaborate bushes, right? Well, and then he adds in sort of a little bit of a retaining wall and some rocks. Well, now he's gotten a brick mason out there, and he's built that up even more, you know, and at some point, you know, who would enforce it? Well, the town could just let that go. And he is at his own peril, this guy putting in all this elaborate stuff right on the right of way. But he would be smarter to say, well, let me get an encroachment agreement so that one day some guy from whatever department's riding by here and just says, you know what, you can't do that. And you're gonna rip it out, and I'm gonna make you rip it out. He can say, I have an agreement. Now, the only time he is sort of really in jeopardy is if the town has to come in and do that because of some kind of necessity, right? And that's what's built into the agreement, that if I don't know how you can do this sort of procedure and not have the right to, when you need to, make use of your right-of-way. So, you know, it would be too complicated an arrangement to tell a property owner, you know, you can put it there and we'll never bother it, and then sure as you do that, one of the public works guys or Kim or whoever comes in here and says, hey, we need to run ever how many thousands of feet of new water line, and now, but this guy's gonna stop the whole process because you got an encroachment agreement with him. So, I get what you're saying, but I think you need to have some kind of a process so that when people wanna come and put something in to the, you know, other than something standard like a paved driveway or a mailbox, something that's easily repaired or put back to the same status if it ever does need to be removed, or if you need to get underneath it. Mailbox is easy to take out and put right back. But
I think we're creating a whole lot of non-permitted spaces that are already out there right now, though. I mean, there's a lot of fence walls and brick columns and everything that run through in our right of way. So, are we going to go and entice them to sign an encroachment agreement if they've already in place, or are we going to try to entice them to come and give us $100 for something they've had for 30 years?
I don't have an answer to that.
That was gonna be my next question as far as utilities that's already here. What would they have to do? I mean, as far as like getting an encroachment agreement, and does it expire like after a year? You got to renew it.
No, it doesn't expire. It lasts perpetually unless the town needs to, like, expand. It would automatically be gone forever if the town came and said, we're gonna widen the road. Right. I mean, that's just, the space is gonna be gone, it's gonna be paved street now. But it'll last forever as long as the town doesn't need to go in there and do anything in that area.
I think we've had a pretty firm conversation, so what's the wishes of the board?
It sounds like we've got an applicant that needs this because they need to move some sewer line.
Well, it's not sewer. What is it anyway? I think it was like fiber, something like that. Nothing like that big, nothing sewer. I think here's the bottom line. People are going to kind of encroach, right? The word even implies that. It's sort of it implies like this edging ever further like a child. If you give them an inch, they take a mile. And if they get in a house and they're fixing up the yard and they want to put a little thing here and a little thing there. And no, I don't think Benson or any other municipality, great or small, that you go to in North Carolina or anywhere else is riding around. Well, there's probably some places that are like this, noting down that, you know, like some HOA commando, that something's out of compliance. And the fact is that if the right-of-way goes, it doesn't typically in everyone's neighborhood, whether you realize this or not, it doesn't stop at the curb. You know, it generally goes right much farther than you probably even think it does into what you think of as your land. And that's where utilities lie, and the town can expand the right-of-way or put sidewalks down. But I think you need something in place so that when it's grander than just some more elaborate landscaping, that you can tell people, hey, look, you really need you need to get an encroachment agreement. You need something in writing, permission essentially from the town, and so that it's noted, and we make sure you don't hit anything when you're installing this stuff. And then the big thing is you need to catch these.
So
these
other
corporate
towns that
acts.
have this are, the fees are between 50 and 200.
50, 250, yeah, something like that.
So whatever we do, we're going to have to come up with a fee right now too.
No, that'll come back with the fee schedule. We'll have to
Right,
amend
we'll
that.
amend the fee schedule at the next meeting.
So we approve this and that.
You guys
Approve the
can
fee.
say, yeah, we agree on 100, and then we'll.
What's the
update
fees?
it.
What's the fee schedule for if I want a variance?
I don't know what the application for a variance is.
I got a
300.
question. Is that fee per block or
No, it's per application. So if
Per
you-
application.
so
So if
if
I
you
did
have-
3 streets, one application.
Well, no, one property, I guess.
Well, okay, so utilities,
Yeah.
to go
well,
back in it, so we'd have to do it for every property in Benson.
So if I'm trying to do a co-location, or put in, install something, say a buried line, that's what they.
In the right of way.
In the right of way for 500 feet.
Yeah.
That's one application. But they gotta come with plans that show exactly what and where and how they're gonna construct and build and place that.
Well, you said every property is one application.
Well, that's one applicant. I don't think they'd have to do 2 applications for that.
Okay,
But I mean, if you couldn't say.
if they're going all the way from like 301 all the way down Main Street, going all the way down Church Street, you see what I'm saying? How
Yeah.
many applications is
They
that
would
gonna
just
be?
do one application.
Okay.
So, but now if you're a private guy, you're just wanting to put in some landscaping features at the road.
Yeah.
You know, that's one application. Now, if you have, I guess if you own like 2 lots and it was really long and elaborate, you could just do one application, right? So, again, I think that's kind of case by case.
Do you think we just need this in place because most places have it?
Well, I don't think that's the main reason.
Well, I'll make a
I'm not up
motion
with
that
just-
we approve this, okay?
I don't think you're just keeping up with the Joneses. I think that too many scenarios with pretty major right-of-way encroachments are falling through the cracks. And when that would happen before, and we were kind of scrambling to deal with that in an ad hoc way, that's when Tim would email me or something and say, man, we really need an encroachment.
Well, Tim had come up with this 2 or 3 years ago and asked about it, and nothing had been done at that time. And we just need to follow through with it now.
Yep, and the more growth you have, the more this stuff's gonna keep coming up. So you think, well, it's never really been a big problem. It hadn't been, but
Well,
it's like everything else. It may start presenting itself as one, and when you get these commercial actors coming in here wanting to do things, and you don't really have a procedure for them to follow, they're gonna do whatever they want.
well, we all keep talking about growth and it's coming, and anything that we need in place, we need to go ahead and get it in place. We're not hurting anybody right now with that. We're not going after mailboxes
No.
and grass. I make a motion, we approve.
Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Holiday schedule, Kim Pickett.
So the next 2 items on the agenda, just understand that we're working on the 2023 calendar for residents and just in general for employees and for you all. Historically, the town of Benson has followed the North Carolina state holiday calendar. So November 1st of every year since I've been here, I've always sent out a memo to the staff and said, here's your holidays for upcoming year. Over the last couple of years, I've been asked by several different employees about June 19th, which is known as Juneteenth. In 2021, President Joe Biden made Juneteenth an official federal holiday, which gave federal staff that day. The state of North Carolina still doesn't necessarily recognize Juneteenth as a holiday on their holiday schedule. However, Governor Cooper did sign Executive Order 262 to provide 8 hours of paid personal observance leave to employees of the cabinet, and then gave other state agencies, commissioners, boards, or officers a choice to adopt that same policy for their personnel. In 2022, we saw that our neighboring municipalities started out giving that day off. So the city of Anger, town of Clayton, city of Raleigh, Wake County government, Durham County government, the city of Durham, city of Fayetteville, and city of Rocky Mount have all added June 19th to their holiday schedule calendar. So I'm asking the board if y'all would be amenable to adding June 19th to our holiday calendar. And the second page of my memo is the actual memo that I would send out to the employees where it adds it, so you can see what other holidays we observe.
And you said beforehand we follow the states.
We typically follow the state
The
calendar.
state does not.
The state has not added it to their holiday calendar, but Governor Cooper has essentially given like 8 hours floating leave. So they give their employees their typical holiday calendar which is everything you see here minus the June 19th, and then they have an additional 8 hours as a floating holiday.
Any discussion?
I make a motion, we approve the calendar as presented.
So
All
just,
in favor, say aye.
just so y'all know, town hall would be closed on that day. So, okay.
Aye.
All in favor, say aye. Opposed, no. Everybody's excited.
All right, the next item on the agenda is the 2023 Board of Commissioner calendar. What you'll notice is I've also added in our most favorite day of the year, the board retreat. I have already proposed a day for that. It's March the 4th. Mr. Neighbors, you are off that day if your schedule doesn't change.
I've already checked it.
It excludes the second meeting in September. It excludes the second meeting in November because that's Thanksgiving. And then it also gives you guys some dates that potentially all board members could attend, so Angie does not have to hopefully repost those. But you have your Electricity Summit, which is in Cary, the annual conference, which is at Myrtle Beach this year, and the Mule Days VIP breakfast, which we typically all join September 23rd. So those are your meeting calendars, and if everybody's good with that, we can go ahead and get that approved and get that on the calendar as well.
Make a motion, we approve.
All in favor, say aye. Opposed, no. Town manager report.
So some of our upcoming events, we have Derek has started ramping up some stuff at the library again. So October 12th, he has craft time. The 17th is story time at the library, and I will actually be doing that. We're going to work on a Scarecrow project, and I think read a Scarecrow book. October 21st, we have movie night in the Grove. We're going to watch The Addams Family 2. October 26th, there's another STEM activity at the library. The 28th is Hallow Fest, trunk or treat on Main Street. That's from 6:30 to 8:30. And Matt, how many cars do you think we have so far?
I think he said he's got right at 30.
So if anybody wants to add a trunk to Hallow Fest, go on the Parks and Rec website on our Town of Benson website and sign up to do that. And October 31st at the library at 10 o'clock. They're going to have Halloween story time at the library, and schools are closed that day, so he will probably be very busy that day. And then want to go ahead and plug November 5th, the Veterans Day event. We are going to have the 5K run that morning, followed by awards at Fainting Goat, and then a parade on Main Street, followed by a huge barbecue cook-off in the Grove. And there's going to be a band playing that day. So it's going to be a really busy Saturday, and hopefully we can celebrate our veterans that day. And I want to say to Miss Loretta, I think she's already left, but I did attend Mule Days this year, and we're going to have your Mule Days update at the next board meeting. But I will say it went off without a hitch. Town staff really didn't have any issues. I think the fire department had some calls, but only just one or two was related to actual Mule Days. The police department was fairly quiet, which was good. So from what I could see, she had a lot of people attend. There was a lot of traffic in town, but everything went really smooth. So I want to say good job to Miss Loretta on a successful Mule Days.
All right.
I don't have anything unless there are more questions for.
William.
I don't have anything at this time.
Will.
Just like to, Matt Smith's been hard working on our Viz Park. We are, the Tot Park will be in operation next month. This month.
It's ordered and on its way. It's be here 17th, should go in the 18th, 19th.
Yeah, and that's right out at Viz Park, along with the other park that we have. Also, he's working hard on some a new park in the Grove, and we're looking at 50, 100, and 150,000 as far as what you get for your bucks. And we're also looking at probably removing at least 6 trees that are growing in or around that park. And thinking about doing something real nice, fencing it in, and really making the Grove a showplace. It already is a showplace. People always come into it, and y'all would be surprised just how many people night and day uses that park. We really need to show it off. We need to do this thing right, and already got people that are very interested in contributing to the park. He's already got some grants that are out there, and also we have some money, but we don't have $150,000 probably to do it all with the fencing and the trees. But he's on top of it. He's getting it done. If you've noticed Biz Park, the fencing is up. We have got ball games going on almost every weekend that is actually bringing revenue in now that we've waited a long time for. And the other fields, I think we're getting dirt in and getting ready to start doing something there. And that's this whole thing is going to be a real plus for Benson, because that's what people coming in, that's what they're looking at. They're looking at where their kids are going to go and how safe it is. So appreciate it, Matt. You're doing a great job. Another thing I'll just touch on, Jerry and I went to a meeting last Thursday with Electric Cities. Very informational meeting, but we're in the same situation. I sat with the town manager from Clayton, and we're in the same situation that they're in. We have just got a full staff right now with our electrical department, and we're blessed. There was a lot of talk about Duke and other power companies that do not have the turnaround that Electric Cities or Air Boys have. And I know we get a lot of complaining about, well, we're higher than Duke. If they sit down and look at it across the board, we're really not. I'd rather have my power on than be without it for 2 days. But anyway, it was a very formal meeting, informational meeting, and if we get a chance to get together, I think the next one is in February.
February in Cary.
Now, if you get a chance and can go, you need to go. It's very, very good meeting, and I think that's about it.
Dean?
I ain't got nothing.
I don't really have anything. Senator Jackson and the hodgepodge of politicians say hello.
Well, I really appreciate Max taking the extra turn for us tonight so that we could have this meeting, because we were sweating this afternoon, we couldn't do it. So thank you a lot, Max, for doing that. Let's see what else we got to do. I'll entertain a motion to go into closed session.
I made a motion.
Let's take a short break, and then we'll come back and clean the room.